RC was able to land the plane. And there are more Baptists that go to a Ligonier conference than there are Presbyterians. And the reason is they're just more Baptists. It's more Baptist, period. Yeah, well, we've gone into the world and made disciples. If you catch the drift.
John, you got anything to add to that? You want to leave that right?
I'm just nervous about all the water behind us in the sanctuary.
A little dab will do you.
If you've ever been to a Southern Baptist convention, it's like a really, really, really big family reunion every June. And there are lots of crazy uncles that come out. That's what it looks like. And but
I think one of them's sitting right over there in the carnival.
Yeah.
Out of consideration for recovering alcoholics, shouldn't grape juice be considered also as an appropriate wine for communion?
Well, we're using low carbohydrate bread for gluttons.
And this is a question from, my guess is a young man, asking about, I can't remember exactly how he worded it. I wrote angry single guy here on the page. Something about, hey, how come no girls marry me? How do I find a girl in this church? I need to find a wife. When? And
another one written by Michael Horton is called Putting Amazing Back into Grace, which is actually the book that the Lord used to bring me into my second conversion when I asked Calvin to come into my heart. No, I'm just kidding.
Good night.
Oh my gosh.
I didn't mention the sacred cat. Now, people at St. Andrews know I like to make fun of cats, but the truth of the matter is I actually do love cats. I've heard that they're delicious.
you did find a wife successfully.
Yeah.
And she's stayed with you all these years. What was it that drew you to Mrs. MacArthur? She wasn't called Mrs. MacArthur back then. She was Patricia. What drew you to her back then? And what are some things that you just really love about your wife?
Well, I love
Is that
everything.
an okay question?
No, yeah.
And it might help the dudes. They need help. What are they looking for? Are they looking for a sign from heaven? Help them out. Give them some.
Yeah, okay. All you guys line up over there. All you single girls line up over here. We're going to give everybody a number, match up, get married.
No work.
I mean, we got to get this thing moving. You're paralyzed. It's just not right.
Eventually, you'll really like each other.
Yeah.
One of my jobs was to do the children's sermon, and we were on the radio, and I was sort of asking the children the question, and I said, what happens if we turn our backs on Jesus? And this 6-year-old girl just screamed it out. She says, we go right down to hell to Satan the devil.
The leadership of the Great Awakening in the colonies, the British colonies,
he didn't like the English any more than we did, I don't think.
What I wanted to quote to Sinclair, this is all parenthetical, is Jonathan Edwards' great statement that he looked forward to the coming of the millennium when the whole world will be as polite as Englishmen. He didn't say as polite as Britishers. Certain parts of Great Britain were apparently left out of that kind of vision of civilization. The outer Celtic fringe was sort of eliminated.
That they may take our lives, but they'll never take of freedom!
I remember once David Miller in his wheelchair was about right here in front of this platform, center stage, and he was preaching in the context of this church. And I was seated over here, front row, and listening, and he was preaching on the doctrine of election. And he has a way of drawing a person in. And as he's preaching and he's driving home his point, he said, "Do you understand what I'm saying?" And then he paused. And he said, "What I'm saying is Jesus was a Calvinist." And immediately I started looking around the room and people were looking at me and I'm like, he's the one that said it, not me.
That there is a genuine awakening, one of which was a show of emotion. And he goes through this list. That does not necessarily in of itself mean that it's a great awakening. But these 5 are of necessity, true of an authentic, genuine movement of God.
What were the 5?
Yeah,
well... It's a real cliffhanger. He's just...
Well, it's a bit of Gnosticism. You have to have intuitive knowledge to know this, Kevin. And Edwards draws out... that, I'm looking for the verse here,
one eternity later.
So I'm not really prepared to give those all 5 of those, although I do have it in a sermon. If I could just call my secretary to have that faxed here. It's a killer sermon. It's a killer. No, I promise you, it is a killer sermon. You should be begging me to give this sermon right now. I'm telling you.
I think we're more concerned that you just said that your secretary uses a fax machine.
Listen, you got to go where the music takes you, okay? I mean, you got to use the technology you're given.
2018, Dr. Lawson, 2018.
Yeah, well, it replaced the squirrels that I had been using.
And then God, anthropomorphically, grabs Eve by the hand and leads her to her husband. This is not an arranged marriage by parents. This is not Adam on his reformed dating app. I have learned a few things being president of Reformation Bible College, such as the Calvinist pickup line. Your name has to be Grace, because you are irresistible.
Because I have a lot of good friends who are doctors, and R.C. made a mistake this afternoon when he presented me as a doctor. I'm not. Now, I have some good friends who are, and I don't hold that against them. But being good friends with a doctor is very much like, living in a chicken coop for 20 years. That doesn't make you a chicken. So,
if somebody lived in a chicken coop for 20 years, can we give them a category at least? I mean, there's something just not right about that.
They can be chicken brain, but they may not be
get
chicken.
John going on chicken.
I like any subjects basically touching on the subject of chicken. Fascinating.
John, this is not profound, but Grace Community Church was built on a piece of property originally that was all chicken coops. And for the first 6 years of my ministry there, we had our bookstore and our Sunday school in chicken coops.
Now, this explains your almost mystical experience at the Shepherd's Conference.
I was so comfortable. I felt so welcome.
Dr. Lawson, wanted to ask you this quick question. Who has impacted you from church history the most, and why? Who's impacted you the most? You've got a litany of people, I'm sure, that are flooding your brain at this point. But who's impacted you the most, and why?
Wow, I mean, that's a tough question. It's like, which of your children do you love the most? and it depends on what's going on in the house.
Well, at one point, they had to move Calvin's Old Testament lectures into the church because so many people wanted to hear him lecture on the Old Testament. You know, wow. I mean, you can understand people crowding in to hear a church history professor because it's full of stories. But the Old Testament, you know.
You know, before I used to hang out with Sinclair, I was 6'5", and he's just driven me into the ground.
He was also more polite towards the Scots.
Not long ago, when I was in Lubbock, Texas, an elderly woman came up to me after I spoke, and I thought she was going to say to me something like, "It's encouraging to see, you know, a youngish man like you preach the word." Or maybe she would say, you know, I've lived many years, and, you know, God is faithful, or something like that. You hear that as well. And instead, she pulled me close and she said, "You look just like a little bantam rooster." As you're about to see, I don't lack for words. I had no words for that.